Imagine you've been fighting this brutal, exhausting war your entire life.
Just taking hits constantly.
Right, taking hits, you're bleeding, your muscles are aching. You are like absolutely convinced you are fighting for your survival against this totally relentless enemy.
Right.
And then suddenly someone turns on the lights and, well, you realize you're standing completely alone in a room. The enemy you've been throwing punches at, it was just your own reflection in a mirror. You've basically been destroying yourself.
That is a terrifying thought.
It is. And welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a profound and honestly pretty haunting transcript today from a YouTube video. It's titled The Doctrine, Volume 3 by the channel Rafa Ben Hood.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece. It's a text that masquerades as poetry, but honestly it operates like a surgical scalpel.
Oh, absolutely.
It uses this incredibly dense lyrical imagery to dissect the human condition, inner conflict, and, well, the hidden architecture of reality itself. If you approach this like a standard informational article, just looking for bullet points, the meaning's going to slip right through your fingers.
Right, which is exactly why our mission today is to act as your guides through this labyrinth. We want to take the heavy lifting out of decoding all these dense metaphors so you can extract the actual philosophical machinery underneath.
Because there's a lot underneath.
So much. And that visceral image of the mirror, that's exactly where this text drops us. The narrator is describing this beast, a terror they are running from, but then they arrive at this devastating conclusion. They say, the monster in the mirror was never out there.
Yeah, that line hits hard.
It really does. They realize that, quote, every war I try to win was a war I held within, and that the lock and the key to this cage, well, they were both inside them all along.
It's just a beautifully poetic way to describe the actual psychological mechanics of projection.
Okay, let's unpack this. Projection.
Right, so when we talk about projection, specifically looking at it through a framework like, say, Jungian shadow theory, we're talking about a defense mechanism.
Like a shield for the ego.
Exactly. I mean, we all have a capacity for chaos, malice, fear, all of that within us. But confronting that, actually admitting that we are capable of terrible things, or that we harbor deep insecurities, that is absolutely devastating to our ego.
Oh yeah, nobody wants to look at that.
No. The human mind simply cannot tolerate that level of cognitive dissonance.
So instead of dealing with the monster inside, the mind just exiles it.
Precisely. We take all those unresolved internal conflicts and we project them onto the external world.
Like shadow boxing in a dark room. You're exhausting yourself fighting an opponent that is literally just your own blocked light.
That's a great analogy. We assign our own shadow to, our boss, our neighbor, a political opponent, because it is so much easier to fight a monster out there
than to admit the call is coming from inside the house.
Exactly. We actively construct enemies to avoid looking at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But, the text pushes this mechanism even further.
How so?
Well, it doesn't just apply projection to fear and hatred. It applies it to desire, too.
Oh, right. The part about the romance.
Yeah. The narrator talks about this hollow romance, saying, I fell in love with the void, call the darkness something real.
Wow.
They were trying to fill a chasm inside themselves by projecting their own idealizations onto someone else.
That line, I was just a mirror of a story in her soul, that captures it perfectly. They weren't even seeing each other at all, were they?
Not at all. They were just two people interacting with their own reflections, desperately trying to make an empty space physically visible.
But, okay, if we follow this logic, right, that our enemies and our saviors are often just our own shadows, it feels like we run into a bit of a practical wall here.
What do you mean?
Well, it's easy to say the monster is me in poetry. But if someone is coming at me in the real world with the actual intent to cause harm, that isn't a projection. That's a tangible physical threat. Does accepting this philosophy mean we just, ignore actual danger?
That is such a crucial distinction to make.
Yeah.
No, the text isn't denying the existence of physical reality or literal danger.
Okay.
It's diagnosing the origin point of our suffering and the reason human conflict perpetuates endlessly. When a genuine threat arises, your ability to respond effectively depends entirely on your clarity of mind.
Right.
If you're operating from a place of projection, if you've made what the text calls a god out of desire, or attach your entire identity to being a victim fighting a monster, you aren't seeing the threat clearly.
Because you're clouded by your own stuff.
Exactly. You were just reacting defensively to protect your ego.
So you're fighting the narrative in your head, not the reality actually in front of you, which means even if you, win the physical altercation, the internal war just finds a new target tomorrow.
Yes. You haven't actually solved anything at all. The psychological battle to maintain our illusions is what keeps the engine of war running.
And that leads to the realization that if we are the ones generating these monsters, or at least continuously feeding them,
We are the only ones who can starve them.
man. So what does this all mean when we zoom out? Because the text shifts here, right? It moves to these fault lines. Once you realize the enemy is internal, you start seeing how this plays out on a macro scale in society.
The cycle of violence.
Yeah, the imagery shifts to this grinding societal conflict where brother turns on brother's face.
Yeah.
You have these two sides locked in this tightening circle, and both sides are completely convinced they are fighting a righteous war against a monster.
And the circle just keeps tightening. It's begging for a release, not another victory.
Right, because another victory is just, well, what is it?
It's just another turn of the wheel. It's revenge disguised as justice, which practically guarantees the defeated party will eventually rise up to seek their own revenge.
This cycle requires participation from both sides to keep spinning.
It does.
So to stop that wheel, the narrator offers a solution that is honestly incredibly difficult to swallow. The refrain goes, let me be the silence where you walk, lay it on my body, I won't fight again.
It's radical.
And then, if love is only proven by what we surrender, let me be the end.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of how a circuit breaker functions in a house.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Imagine a massive electrical surge, right? The wires in the walls are overloading. They're getting hotter and hotter. They are literally seconds away from catching fire and burning the entire structure to the ground.
Okay.
What does the circuit breaker do? It doesn't fight the electrical current.
Right. Doesn't push back.
No, it doesn't push back with its own opposing electricity. That would just create more heat, more friction. The breaker simply drops to zero. It trips.
It creates a gap in the connection.
Exactly. It literally becomes the silence in the circuit. It absorbs the break, shutting down its own function so that the entire system doesn't burn.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, mechanically, that is exactly what the text is advocating for in human interaction. Dropping your resistance.
Which is so hard.
Incredibly hard. When someone insults you or attacks your identity, your ego demands that you return fire. You feel the heat rising, just like those wires.
Yeah, you want to defend yourself.
But to be the silence means letting the insult land, feeling the sting of it, and actively choosing not to transmit that pain back into the world. The text says, I will stand where lines collapse and let the deeper law begin.
That takes a staggering amount of psychological fortitude. I mean, it's really easy to view silence or surrender as weakness, right? Like you're just rolling over.
But it's not weakness.
No. What the text describes is an active, agonizing choice. It's the death of the ego's absolute need to be right. You are volunteering to be the grounding wire for someone else's toxic energy.
Saying if something must be taken, let it all be me.
It's the ultimate short circuit to violence.
It is. But arriving at that level of radical surrender, it requires internalizing a massive foundational truth about reality. You have to actually understand that deeper law.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The narrative takes this fascinating turn when it explores the consequences of trying to share that deeper law with people who just aren't ready for it.
Yes, the narrator makes a critical error here.
Yeah.
They secure this profound, hard-won wisdom, and instead of keeping it safe, they bring it out into the open.
I said it out loud when it should have stayed still, took fire from the mountain, brought it down the hill.
And what's fascinating here is the reaction of the crowd. It's incredibly revealing. They don't take the fire and use it to illuminate their own internal darkness.
No, they gather around it like children. The text says they put their hands in the flame, calling it truth, but they don't know the name.
They worship the aesthetic of the truth without actually accepting the burden of it.
It's like handing a loaded smartphone to a toddler. The toddler doesn't understand the vast network of information. They just like the shiny screen and the sounds. Or, maybe a better analogy, handing the blueprint for splitting the atom to someone who just wants to build a bigger bonfire.
That's dangerous.
Exactly. The power you're handing them is pure, but without the wisdom, the discipline, the internal architecture to contain it, they aren't going to get warmth. They're going to build a bomb.
That is the danger of unearned wisdom. Why does the crowd turn this pure truth into what the text calls noise? Well, it comes down to cognitive dissonance again.
Right.
To truly accept the fire from the mountain means they have to stop fighting their reflections. It means giving up their projected enemies, relinquishing their identity as victims or righteous warriors.
And people love their monsters.
They do, because the monster gives their life a very simple, defined purpose.
Yeah, if the monster's gone, I have to look at myself, and I really don't want to do that. So instead, they take the profound truth and they twist it. They use it to justify their existing wars.
Every half-truth lighter than it ought to go.
Which leaves the narrator with a haunting realization. I gave them half the secret, now I carry all the blame.
When deep esoteric knowledge is consumed casually by the masses, it almost always gets weaponized. It becomes a tool for division and ego inflation.
Literally the exact opposite of the silent surrender it was meant to inspire.
Exactly.
So if the truth gets weaponized the second it touches the open air, the people who hold it really only have two choices, right? Let it be destroyed by the crowd or figure out a way to disguise it. Does this mean truth is inherently elitist?
It's not about elitism, it's about preservation. Historically, as well as in this text, the truth goes underground. The text tells us, truth didn't die, we learned how to hide.
Right.
This is the entire mechanism behind esoteric traditions throughout human history. Think about the ancient alchemists, for example.
Okay, turning lead into gold.
Right, but they weren't literally trying to turn physical lead into physical gold.
They were talking about psychological transformation.
Yes, taking the heavy, dense, base material of the human ego,
The lead.
and purifying it through spiritual discipline until it became gold.
But if they spoke plainly about radical spiritual independence in the Middle Ages,
They would have been burned at the stake. Or, at best, completely misunderstood by the masses. So they wrapped the psychological truth in the language of chemistry.
they encoded it.
They encoded it in complex art, rituals, symbols. As the text beautifully puts it, they dressed it up in prayers, they signed another name.
The truth became a diamond in the dust wrapped in a veil.
Exactly.
I love that line. There's always another book behind the book. You could spend your entire life reading the literal words of a myth or a religious text or even a poem like this and completely miss the flame hiding underneath the names.
Because you're just looking at the veil,
Yeah.
which demands a completely different kind of literacy. You have to learn to read the structural code beneath the story.
And when you finally peel back that veil, the text makes this massive pivot. We move out of the emotional societal struggle and drop straight into the foundational architecture of reality.
It's a huge shift.
It is. The narrator stops talking about wars and brothers and suddenly sees chalk lines, a triangle, a circle, a square.
We shift from the psychological straight to the cosmological. These are the geometric building blocks of existence.
And then the numbers 10 and 22 pop up, and it sounds incredibly specific, like 10 and 22 drawn in the sand, build me a world from a single command. I got so excited reading this part because it feels like we are looking at a piece of ancient source code,
What you are.
like the scaffolding of the universe itself.
You are exactly right. It's a structural blueprint, and those numbers are definitely not arbitrary. This raises an important question about where these ideas come from. In ancient esoteric traditions, specifically within the Kabbalistic tree of life,
Yeah.
you have this complex map of existence.
Okay, yeah.
It's composed of 10 spheres representing different emanations of reality, which are known as the Sephirot, and they are connected by exactly 22 distinct pathways.
So it's essentially an ancient symbolic map that these thinkers use to explain the mechanics of how infinite unformed energy condenses down, step by step, into physical matter.
Yes, and it also mirrors the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which in mystical traditions were believed to be the actual phonetic building blocks that spoke the universe into creation.
Wow.
But here's the thing. You don't even need to be a scholar of ancient mysticism to grasp the mechanism being described here.
Right. The core idea stands on its own.
The text is revealing that the universe is not built on random chaos. It's built on a recurring, scalable code.
It's the ultimate expression of fractal geometry. I mean, think about how a fractal works. You can zoom in on the jagged edge of a coastline, and the shape of a single microscopic pebble perfectly mirrors the shape of the entire continent.
Yes, the macrocosm is perfectly reflected in the microcosm.
Infinity in the palm of a hand, and all of heaven in a grain. The exact same structural blueprint that governs the infinite expanding cosmos is also present in the smallest, most mundane moments of our lives.
And the text beautifully illustrates this by placing that cosmic power in the hands of a child with dirt on his hands tracing the shape of a plan. What stands out to you when you consider that the infinite isn't out there to be conquered, but resting quietly in the palm of your hand?
It all connects back to the beginning for me. The monster wasn't out there in the dark woods, it was inside the mind. But the divine, the infinite, the foundational code that builds entire worlds.
That isn't out there either.
No, it isn't hiding in some distant galaxy. It is resting quietly in the palm of your hand. The lock and the key are both within.
It completely reorients your entire relationship with reality. If the universe is fractal, then how you handle the smallest internal conflict is exactly how you handle the macrocosm.
Wow. We have mapped out some incredibly dense territory today. Let's trace the through line of what this text has actually shown us.
Let's do it.
We started by dismantling the illusion of the external enemy, recognizing that the exhausting wars we fight are almost always projections of our own internal shadows and unresolved desires. The monster in the mirror is just us.
And from there, we examine the mechanics of stopping that conflict, recognizing that simply fighting back just feeds the system more energy. The only way to break the tightening circle of violence is the radical, ego-destroying choice to become the circuit breaker.
To be the silence and absorb the hit without returning it.
Exactly.
Then we saw how that profound level of truth is actually dangerous to an unprepared mind, how the masses will take the fire of wisdom and turn it into the noise of a weaponized half-truth.
Forcing the purest knowledge to hide underground in symbols, becoming another book behind the book.
Right. And finally, when we learn to look past the veil of those symbols, we find the cosmic blueprint. The realization that the infinite architecture of reality isn't this vast, unapproachable mystery, but a scalable code present in a single grain of sand.
So why should you care about any of this? In a world that is constantly screaming at you to fight external battles, to pick a side, to curate your entire identity around your grievances, this text offers a radical alternative.
It really does.
True knowledge isn't about gathering more facts to win an argument. It's about understanding how the mirror itself is built. It requires the profound courage to look inward when literally everything else is telling you to look outward.
So well said. So we want to leave you with a concrete challenge based on what we've uncovered today. The next time you find yourself aggressively arguing with someone on the internet or locked in a frustrating, repetitive conflict with a family member, hit the pause button.
Just for a second.
Ask yourself a very hard question. If there is always another book behind the book, what hidden dynamic in your own life are you currently taking at face value? Am I actually trying to solve a structural problem here, or am I just feeding the monster in my mirror to avoid looking at my own insecurities?
It's a tough question.
It is. What hidden fire might you discover if you finally stopped throwing punches at your own reflection, decided to be the silence, and looked for the code underneath?
Let me be the silence.